Now that we've finished creating our colorized composition from the research for our movie poster, let's jump into Adobe Illustrator and begin the first part of vectorizing our illustration. So in Adobe Illustrator, let's go up to File, down to Create New, and our document needs to be measured in inches, and the size of it is going to be 10 inches wide by 15 inches tall. For now, we only need one artboard, but do make sure that your color mode is set to RGB, and we'll say Create. This will give us our new document that we can place our composition into. I'm also going to open up my Layers panel. We'll go up to File, down to Place, and let's find that composition. Here it is on the desktop. We'll say Place, and we simply need to place it in the upper corner so that it fills out our entire artboard. From here, all of the illustration part is going to be done on a separate layer. So I'm going to lock down layer 1 and create a new layer on top of this. And if you want to rename those something to keep them separate, you can do that as well. The first thing that we need to do, as we did with our hands exercise, is to give ourselves a variety of different color swatches to do our illustration in. We don't simply want to use all of the colors that are on here. We want to limit our palette to just those that are necessary for this design. So to do this, I'm going to go to my tool panel and get my rectangle tool. Let's set our fill color for now to be white with no stroke outline, and give yourself about 10 little squares at the top of your artboard. Now there's nothing sacred about these 10 squares, 6, 8, 10. You may need more or you may need less, but what we want to do is to colorize them the full range of lights, midtones, and shadows that you find within your composition for your artwork. To do this, we're going to use our Eyedropper tool. With the Eyedropper tool selected and the foreground color or the fill color set to the foreground, you can click inside of the area and it'll pick up that particular color. So going from darkest to lightest, this is where I want to pick up these colors, in this case this dark blue. If you hold down the Option key and click on a square, it'll automatically fill it in. So do this to pick up as many different colors as you can, but just know you don't have to do all 10 of them, or you can add on more colors if necessary. Now that I've got a good range selected, I can go through and I can move things around just to make sure everything seems to go in a flowing order. Then use your black arrow selection tool to highlight all of the colors. Go over to your Swatches panel, and inside the swatch options, choose Add Selected Colors. This will add all of your color range to your Swatches panel. You can then, let's deselect them first. Click on all of these. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and get all of the swatches and put them inside of a folder. So this group of colors is what I'm going to use whenever I recreate my entire composition. From here I'll back out and I can get rid of my color swatches, and I'll also save this at this time. I'm going to simply call it my movie poster, the name of the movie, Dune Movie Poster. One last note about color. As you start working, you may find that you want to add on 1 or 2 more colors just to be able to describe and illustrate certain parts that you may have missed, and that's totally fine for you to do that. Now to begin with this, unlike the hands project, these are going to be a little bit more complex in that you've got a variety of different faces, and all of those faces have lots of little details to them. So I'm going to recommend that you don't just take this as one whole illustration, but zoom in and take it as one character or even parts of the character at a time. So as I begin, I'm going to focus on one character and all its details, and then move on to another part and another person as I build out my overall illustration. The starting point for this is going to be exactly the same as we did with our hands exercise. In my new layer, I'm going to focus on one character. And in this case, maybe I'll even focus just on his face and then later on inside of his hair. The tool I'm going to use is going to be my pencil tool, and we'll start off by giving ourselves just a basic little outline of a midground or a dominant color shape. So with my pencil tool, I'll double click on the options or the icon to bring up the tools options, and I'm going to set my fidelity to be a little bit closer to accurate, and I want to be able to fill in and keep these shapes selected or keep them editable as I work through there. Next, let's grab our Swatches panel, and I'm going to choose just a good mid-tone for this character, which I think would be a good flesh tone with this one. We'll trace it off. And again, you can be a little bit more discerning about where the edges are, because later on we're going to go back on top of mine with another color. There, now that I've got that outlined, I'm going to swap over and get another color, and let's do the same for his hair. In my case, I'm going to get a mid-darker tone, and I'll be a little bit more careful about picking up on some of the hairlines that are here too. All right, with that outlined, I can swap it over, and I can also select my underground tone or my tone for his face and swap that out too. Now if I go to my layers panel and I turn off the visibility for this layer, you can see there's some areas that simply don't overlap very well, and this is where it's kind of ambiguous about what to do. Also, if I turn back on my photograph, you'll notice I didn't get every strand of hair inside of this basic shape. Later on, I'll go back in and I'll add those details as I need with my line work. So don't think that you have to get every single little strand if that is too difficult to draw. However, I can go through and clean up some parts of these if necessary. So with this turned on and selected, I'm going to use my warp tool. The warp tool is hiding underneath your width tool. Simply select the shape that you want, and then I can push it over until it fills in and gets all the little missing pieces or little cracks filled in too. Maybe I can do the same for parts of my skin. That way it's nice and cleaned up with there. With this done in my layers panel, I'll lock down my layer 2, create a new layer on top of it, and I can turn off visibility. And this is where I can go in with my pencil tool and start defining all of the other different color shapes that I see. And again, use the color tones that we have within your swatches panel. If I'm working on the face, maybe I'll start doing my shadows first, and then swap over to my midtones, and then finally do the highlights. Remember, the more colors you have, this is also a good way of adding more variety and more detail to your design, but it also is going to make it a little bit longer. So this is where you slow down, take your time, and use your artistic abilities. As I draw off the face, or as I draw off each of the different colors, I'm going to be adding on more and more layers. With all of his face now done, I can go over to my layers panel and let's select all of the layers that make up the face, go to the options, And we're not going to flatten everything, but we're just going to merge the selected layers all into one solid layer from here. Everything looks good with that. The next thing I want to do now is to focus on doing his hair. And just like I did with the face, I'm going to make a variety of different shapes, all on different layers, above my main layer with this one. All right, with the hair done, as I've done with all of the others, I can return to my Layers panel, select all the layers that are associated with this particular face, and we can merge them together. Now you can see where I've left off some of the details and I've kept it very, very simple. Later on, the last part we're going to do is to go in and draw line and hatching work to add in those missing details. So for instance, in the hair, if I didn't get a highlight or a single strand or little parts completely drawn in and rendered, that's okay. What I'm mainly looking for now are just these large block shaded areas. So I'm going to repeat this process for each of my other characters, and then later on I'm going to go back and add my background illustration part with that too. All right, with this part done, you can see I've vectorized all of the different parts for each of my characters. They're all on a separate layer, including a background layer. And I still have my photograph fully behind everything else as well. So with all of this part done, now we can focus on doing the details of blending things together and also adding line work for smaller details too. For now, we'll go up to File and let's save our document. And to get ready for the second part, I'm going to go to my layers one more time, and I'm going to merge all of these parts together except for layer 1. So let's merge those. We'll unlock layer 1. Let's drag our photograph off the area so we can see it side by side.